Jake Reiner really thought this Christmas would be the one that fixed everything. He planned it down to the smallest detail. The table set perfectly, the lights glowing, soft and warm, and the music playing like a movie scene. In his mind, it was going to be the night that brought his family back together, just like old times. He pictured everyone sitting in that Brentwood home again. Laughter, peace, maybe even forgiveness. But on December 14th, everything shattered in an instant. One phone call tore his world apart, and the name on the other end left him frozen. His parents, Rob Reiner and Michelle, were gone, and the person tied to it all was his younger brother, Nick Reiner. The same brother Jake had sworn to protect no matter what. The pain that followed wasn't just heartbreak, it was pure disbelief mixed with a deep, burning anger that couldn't be contained.
I think with any indie project, it is a heavy lift no matter what you do. I mean, it is a grassroots effort to raise money to make this film, and then not only that, but take it to theaters. We didn't want to go to the streaming route. We wanted to put it into theaters because we felt like, as a comedy, we wanted that experience of everybody watching the movie together and laughing together.
Not long after, Jake showed up on KCBS and dropped a bombshell that made the whole studio go silent. He revealed that he had warned his parents. He told them he was scared that one day Nick might do something that couldn't be undone. That wasn't just emotion spilling out. That was years of frustration finally breaking loose. It was the moment when decades of family tension snapped wide open, when all the silence and pretending finally exploded into truth. Jake didn't just speak that night, he exposed the reality his family had been hiding for far too long. The favoritism, the excuses, the blind loyalty that always seemed to protect Nick no matter what he did. It didn't just appear out of nowhere, it built up little by little, mistake after mistake, until the family couldn't hold itself together anymore.
It's just like any other household. I mean, I didn't know any different, you know, like I grew up in this house with these parents, and around, you know, the house, dad is just dad.
Yeah.
But it's funny when you go outside the house, then it's like, oh, he's this person. Like, you kind of are shown that when people come up to him and interact with him. Same thing with my grandfather.
Years of covering up, forgiving, and pretending everything was fine finally pushed them to the edge. So when Nick called from custody, crying and begging for help, swearing he was innocent and pleading for bail, Jake didn't cave this time. He said no, not because he was cold, but because deep down he knew the truth. The family had been breaking apart for years, and this time there was no fixing what had been shattered. By December 17th, Los Angeles felt strange, quiet, heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath under a gray winter sky. As Nick climbed the courthouse steps, surrounded by flashing cameras, Jake sat under the bright, unforgiving lights at the KCBS studio, the very place he had dedicated most of his life to.
We were going to war again, based on a lie. And it was just very, very disturbing. And there's a line in the film where James Marsden, who plays Warren Strobel, he says, it feels like you feel like your child is running into the street.
But those lights weren't kind tonight. They cut sharp lines across his tired face, showing a man completely worn down by sleepless nights and unbearable weight. His dark suit hung loose, almost like his body had grown used to carrying pain instead of peace.
I've learned that acting is, it's about being real. It's about being grounded in who you are and making the part about you, because it is a version of yourself. And in order to make it real and come across as authentic on screen, you got to be authentic to yourself.
This wasn't the confident, polished reporter the public knew. This was someone cracked open by loss, years of silence, and a storm of emotions he couldn't hide anymore. His shoulders were tight, his hands locked together on the desk, knuckles pale from holding on too hard. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled, rough, uneven, like each word had to fight its way out. "I've sat here through so many long nights," he began softly, voice breaking, "but never one like this." And just like that, the past came crashing back. Memories flooded him, old laughter, heavy arguments, moments that once felt small but now hit like waves. Jake talked about growing up under the Reiner name, a name that made others smile, but for him it was a burden, a weight he could never take off, like wearing a coat that didn't fit but he could never remove. 3 sizes too big, that's what it felt like. From the outside, everything looked impressive, even perfect, but inside it was suffocating. Born on June 6, 1991, in Los Angeles, Jake's world was surrounded by art from the very beginning. His father, a legendary director, and his mother, a talented photographer, built a home that buzzed with laughter, film reels, and creative sparks flying everywhere. Even his grandfather Carl's jokes echoed through the halls, turning ordinary moments into pure magic.
Norman Lear was the first person that got me. I mean, I was playing jacks with his daughter. Norman says to my dad, you know, this kid is really funny. My dad said, what, that kid? That kid, he's a sullen. He sits quiet. He doesn't, he's not funny.
From the outside, the Reiner family looked like a dream. Love, laughter, and legacy wrapped in Hollywood shine. But behind that glow, things were far from perfect. Jake grew up with a younger sister and a little brother, and being the oldest meant learning early how to step back, giving up attention, giving up space, sometimes even giving up himself. Nick was smaller, quieter, more delicate, and because of that, the whole house seemed to revolve around him. Jake handed over his toys, his time, and even his voice. Every time he tried to speak up, someone would remind him he's still little. So Jake stayed quiet, swallowing his feelings and building walls just to keep the peace. Whenever Nick got upset, everything changed instantly. The house would freeze, conversation stopped, laughter disappeared, and Jake would slip away, whispering to himself, "I'm fine," over and over, until those words turned into his armor. His parents adored Nick, but it wasn't the simple kind of love. It was love built on fear, the kind that squeezes too tight, hoping to protect, but ending up suffocating instead. They defended him endlessly, explained away every outburst, convincing themselves that patience would somehow make it all better. But patience always comes with a price, and in that house, everyone paid it in silence. And for Jake, the price of keeping peace was his own voice. He could still remember standing there, watching Nick spiral out of control, while everyone else tried to laugh it off like it was nothing. Michelle would pull Nick close, whispering softly, "He's just having a hard time." Jake nodded, pretending to understand, but deep down, something inside him cracked a little more each time. That quiet distance between him and the rest of the family grew wider with every passing year. He never blamed his parents for how they loved Nick. He knew it came from care, from fear, from wanting to keep him steady. But as Jake got older, that responsibility slowly shifted onto his shoulders. He became the calm one, the dependable one, the one who never made waves, the one who swallowed his pain just to keep the house peaceful. "I'm used to it," he once told his mom, half joking, half desperate. And Michelle smiled, not realizing those words weren't a joke after all. They were a quiet confession. Baseball became Jake's escape, his sacred little world, something pure that belonged just to him. It was more than a game. It was tradition, passed down like gold through generations, from his grandfather to Rob to Jake, under the warm California sun at Dodger Stadium. Rob and Jake would sit side by side in the stands, inning after inning, like time itself had slowed down just for them. Rob would say with pride, "My father passed his love of baseball to me, and I passed it to Jake," his voice cracking every time he said it. Those games, those long road trips to Cooperstown, those Hall of Fame moments, they were rare slices of peace, just father and son together, no chaos, no shouting, just quiet joy and the sound of the game holding them close. But even in those rare, bright memories, Nick's shadow was always there, lingering, heavy, impossible to escape. As Jake grew older, even his teenage years revolved around his younger brother's chaos.
When Nick turned 15, things started to shift fast. At first it seemed small: tired eyes, strange moods, nights that stretched too long and ended with him disappearing without a word. Jake saw the signs and thought, he's trying to say something, he's asking for help. But that quiet cry for help got buried under the storm that followed. Year after year, Jake watched Nick bounce between schools, rehab programs, and back again, each time swearing, "I'll do better, for real this time." Jake wanted to believe him, he really did. So did Rob and Michelle. But deep down, Jake was scared, because they had all believed too many times before, and each promise had broken something inside them. The hardest part wasn't just watching Nick fall apart, it was seeing what it did to their parents. Rob seemed to age overnight. His shoulders always slumped under the weight of constant worry. Michelle lived in a never-ending cycle of hope and dread, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for a message or a call to confirm that Nick was still alive somewhere out there. Every single day turned into a battle between faith and heartbreak. One night, Jake overheard his mom whispering through tears, her voice trembling, "As long as he's still breathing, I won't give up." Those words cut deep. Love mixed with desperation so raw it almost hurt to hear. And there were nights when Nick came home completely out of control, slamming doors, shouting, breaking things, and Jake would watch Rob step in, shielding both his sons, trying to hold a family that was already breaking apart.
Michelle would cry quietly in the next room, hiding her tears so Nick wouldn't see her pain. That's when it hit Jake. This wasn't normal family life anymore. They weren't living, they were surviving, clinging to every moment like it might be the last. "We have to save him," Rob once said firmly, trying to sound sure, but even his voice wavered. Jake stayed silent, because inside, one question kept haunting him. How do you save someone who doesn't want to be saved? Who saves the ones doing all the saving? That question haunted Jake more than he ever admitted. As the years passed, he learned to stay quiet, watching everything, reading every emotion in the room, taking it all in without saying much. The thought of leaving home started to sneak into his mind, not to escape, but just to breathe again. Fame didn't excite him, it scared him. Living publicly while hiding private pain felt like walking on broken glass. He remembered standing backstage once, watching the bright lights hit everyone else, the cheers, the flashes, and whispering to himself, "What if this path isn't mine?" That question stuck with him for years. So even with the powerful Reiner name behind him, Jake didn't chase Hollywood like everyone expected him to. He decided to build his own lane, something real, something that was truly his. He enrolled at Syracuse University to study broadcast journalism, and for the first time in his life, something clicked. The moment he walked into a newsroom, something inside him lit up. Storytelling, truth, purpose, it all made perfect sense. "I only have one other passion," Jake once said, "a passion for news," and he meant every word of it. After graduation, he threw himself into the grind, starting small at local stations like KION in Salinas before moving up to KPRC Channel 2 in Houston between 2016 and 2018. Those years tested him, shaped him, and proved he didn't need the family name to make it. Jake became known for being calm, grounded, and real, especially when reporting tough stories about the community and law enforcement. He was finally building something of his own. No shortcuts, no favors, no handouts, just pure, relentless work. From small-town news clips to live citywide broadcasts, Jake earned every inch of respect he got. Viewers trusted his steady voice and clear focus, the kind that made people feel safe even in the middle of chaos. But when the camera shut off and the lights dimmed, the old emptiness came creeping back, slow, heavy, unshakable. Night after night, in the silence of his apartment, Jake realized success couldn't quiet the noise that had been living inside him for years. The weight came back, heavy and familiar, even after Jake joined KCBS and KCAL in Los Angeles. He never once used his last name to get ahead. Every inch of success he had, he built with his own hands, brick by brick, grinding through long hours and endless pressure. Respect didn't come from legacy. It came from showing up every single day and proving himself when no one expected him to. And through all the chaos, one thing never changed: baseball. That sacred bond never broke. To keep it alive, Jake co-hosted the StreetLight Digest podcast with his closest friends, holding tight to the one thing that still felt like home. Every episode was loud, full of laughter, passion, and that electric energy that only true fans have. But for Jake, it was never just about the game. It was about keeping his family memories alive, those moments that once held his world together. Whenever he talked about KCBS, something shifted in him. His back would straighten, his tone would steady, like that newsroom was the last solid ground he had left to stand on. He'd remember those freezing night shifts, chasing breaking stories that left emotional scars, and those quiet, lonely hours when truth met exhaustion. "I chose journalism," he once said softly, "because I thought if I stood behind the story, life wouldn't call my name." Then came that faint smile, small but full of meaning, followed by 3 words that said everything: "I was wrong." Those words carried years of hidden pain, the kind you can't quite name but always feel sitting just behind your ribs. Eventually, Jake found his way back toward acting, not as Rob Reiner's son, but as his own man, stepping into something that was both terrifying and strangely familiar. He moved carefully, balancing fear with quiet courage, taking each role like it was a test of faith. The projects came slowly: television, film, light comedies, and deep emotional dramas. But Jake never tried to dominate a scene. He didn't need to shout to be noticed. He had this still, magnetic power that pulled people in, a calm intensity that made everyone stop and watch. Before long, audiences started realizing the truth. This wasn't Rob Reiner's son anymore. This was Jake Reiner, standing on his own, carrying his story with strength and quiet fire. This was Jake Reiner, layered, grounded, and completely real. Then came 2023, the year everything flipped. Jake started landing serious roles: Curb Your Enthusiasm, For All Mankind, American Crime Story, all big, respected projects that showed just how far he'd come. But it was his lead role in Love and Tax that truly stunned everyone. His performance was raw, deep, and unforgettable. And when he won Best Actor at the Myrtle Beach International Film Festival in 2024, the entire room went silent in awe. That moment shut down every critic who had ever doubted him. Even in smaller roles like Shock and Awe, Jake showed he'd found something rare: the perfect balance between a journalist's precision and an artist's soul. But the hardest confession Jake ever made didn't come in a headline. It came quietly, during an on-air interview when he opened up about what really went through his mind between takes. He said in those silent pauses on set, when the camera stopped rolling and the lights dimmed, his thoughts always drifted back to his parents. Even surrounded by film crews, bright lights, and chaos, he wasn't performing for directors or critics. In his mind, Rob was always there, just off camera, arms crossed, watching with that familiar look of focus and pride. And Michelle, she was softer, calmer, watching like she always did, seeing everything through that invisible lens that only she had. Jake remembered those late-night phone calls after filming, trying to sound casual even though excitement buzzed through his voice. He'd talk about new roles, fresh scripts, independent projects finally coming to life. "I did it," he'd say, half joking but fully proud. Then came the quiet, the Reiner pause, before Rob's steady voice broke through the phone, calm and sure. "I knew you would." And right after, Michelle's gentle laugh, warm, trembling, full of love. "I always knew you'd find your place." Those words became his fuel. Every award, every glowing review, every win, Jake wanted them to hear it first. He sent photos from sets, links to articles, little behind-the-scenes clips, tiny pieces of a journey he wished they could watch unfold in real time. Michelle would reply with long, emotional messages, her words wrapping around him like home, reminding Jake that no matter how far he went, he was still their son,
still part of that story that started long before the spotlight ever found him. Rob's messages were always short, direct, steady, and full of quiet pride. No wasted words, no big speeches, just truth written between the lines. But Jake understood that silence perfectly. "You're on the right path," Rob once wrote, and Jake read that single line more times than he'd ever admit. Those words weren't just advice, they were everything he'd ever wanted to hear from his father. As the holidays got closer, one thought kept filling Jake's heart. This Christmas would finally be different. After years of distance, awkward calls, and missed connections, he was finally going home. He could see it so clearly in his mind, the Reiner living room glowing with soft lights, the air warm with music and laughter. He imagined laying out his latest work like late Christmas gifts waiting to be opened, Rob nodding with pride, Michelle squeezing his hand and whispering, "Our son." Jake replayed that dream again and again, letting the hope of it keep him moving forward.
He planned every single detail, the flight home, the perfect gifts, even the words he'd say when he walked through that front door. "I'm home." In his heart, he truly believed this Christmas would be the one to heal everything. He wasn't returning as the uncertain kid trying to prove himself anymore. He was coming back as a man who had built his own path with hard work, grit, and discipline. This was supposed to be the moment. But life doesn't always wait for perfect timing. On December 14th, everything flipped in a heartbeat. Jake was on set in New York, wrapping his latest film when the call came through. Fast, cold, and world-shattering. He barely had time to process the words before his entire world collapsed around him. His parents, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner, were gone, taken from the same Brentwood home where every memory of childhood still lived, where laughter once filled the halls. That call didn't just end a day, it ended a lifetime of waiting, of hoping for one more chance to make things right. And in that instant, Jake realized the dream he'd been holding on to wasn't coming true. It was slipping away forever. The details were unbearable, too heavy, too unreal to process. It didn't even feel possible. This wasn't just loss, this was reality tearing itself apart right in front of him. Before Jake could even catch his breath, another blow hit even harder. The name of the person accused. It was Nick, his own younger brother. For a moment, Jake went completely still, his body numb, his mind blank, like the ground had vanished beneath him. That Christmas reunion he had played over and over in his head, the warm dinner, the laughter, the second chance, all of it vanished in an instant, replaced by an empty table and 2 chairs that would never be filled again. The silence that followed was deafening, crushing, absolute. The next morning, Jake got on the first flight back to Los Angeles. When he saw his sister, Romy, they didn't say a word. They just held each other tight, collapsing under the weight of it all. There were no explanations, no words that could make sense of something this brutal. Later, they would whisper to each other, "The pain we're living through can't be explained." And it was true, completely true. Standing there in the city that had once been home, Jake felt more alone than ever. The bright lights of Hollywood meant nothing now. Every street, every familiar landmark felt cold and hollow. Days passed in a blur, and that deep grief slowly twisted into something sharper, a burning anger that refused to die down. When he finally began to speak publicly, he didn't hold back. He tore through the illusion of a perfect Hollywood family, leaving everyone stunned and speechless. "I warned them," Jake said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I warned my parents 3 months earlier when Nick wanted to move back in." Those words carried everything, fury, heartbreak, guilt, all tangled together. And that warning didn't come from frustration or bitterness. It came from fear, from years of watching the same pattern repeat again and again, and knowing deep down that one day it might end exactly like this. It came from fear the kind of fear that crawls under your skin and keeps you awake at night, sensing that something terrible is getting closer. "I don't feel safe," he had told them, his hands trembling as he spoke. Nick had been unstable for years, bouncing between rough living situations and recovery programs, and now he wanted to move back into the Brentwood home. The moment he heard that, panic hit him like a wave. He called his parents immediately, desperate and out of breath. "Don't let him move back in," he begged. "He's not well. Please be careful." His words weren't angry, they were terrified. Every syllable came straight from the heart. As he later recalled, his jaw had locked tight that night, every muscle tense with dread. This wasn't about blame anymore. It was exhaustion. Years of trying to hold the family together had worn him down, and he was running out of ways to protect everyone. "Please," he'd said softly, "if not for me, then for yourselves." But Rob and Michelle did what they'd always done. They chose love over fear, forgiveness over caution. They believed with all their hearts that love could heal anything. Jake remembered his father's calm, steady voice on the phone. "Son, Nick is your brother. He's trying to change. We're family." Then came Michelle's soft reassurance. "We'll keep an eye on him, sweetheart. We'll help him through it." Jake wanted so badly to believe them, but that tight, sinking dread in his chest wouldn't fade. And then the unthinkable happened. On live television, Jake broke. His voice cracked and shattered as the truth came spilling out. Through tears streaming down his face, pain twisted into fury as he said, "I never thought he could do something like this." He clenched his teeth, every word shaking with rage and heartbreak. "He took them from me," he said, his voice trembling but fierce. "I warned them and nobody listened." That moment wasn't just grief anymore. It was devastation mixed with betrayal, years of silence erupting into raw truth for the world to hear. But when the lights dimmed and the camera stopped rolling, that rage turned inward into guilt, heavy, consuming guilt. Jake replayed everything in his mind over and over, every phone call, every message, every ignored instinct, every warning that came too late, and each time it tore at him like it was happening all over again. "If I had come home sooner, would things be different?" Jake whispered into the emptiness. The silence that followed felt endless, stretching out like time had stopped. When he thought of Nick now, his emotions tangled into one unbearable knot. Anger, sorrow, disbelief, all crashing together with no way to pull them apart. "He's my brother," Jake said softly, his voice trembling, "but he's also the one who took my parents from me." The words barely escaped before his body gave in. His shoulders caved, his hands shook, and the tears just wouldn't stop. "I warned them," he whispered again and again, as if repeating it could somehow rewrite the past. Then suddenly, his phone buzzed, one sharp vibration. Jake froze. The number flashing on the screen made his chest tighten instantly. It was Nick. For a second, he just stared at the screen, trapped between love and fury, between the instinct to answer and the urge to throw the phone across the room. Finally, his thumb moved. He picked up. On the other end came a voice, hoarse, panicked, desperate. "I didn't do it," Nick said over and over, his words frantic and broken. "It's not what they're saying. Please, Jake, you're all I have left." Jake closed his eyes, gripping the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. That voice, it wasn't just his brother's anymore. It was the same scared kid he'd spent his whole life trying to protect. For a heartbeat, all the years flooded back, the promises, the fights, the sleepless nights. Then Nick's tone shifted, raw and pleading. "4 million, he said. "Use your connections, your money, anything. Get me out. I can't survive in here."
Jake's heart twisted like it was being pulled apart from the inside. The past, the love, the guilt, and the pain all collided at once, leaving him caught in the worst kind of storm, the kind where every choice hurts and there's no way to come out clean. He could almost hear his parents' laughter echoing faintly in his head, soft, distant, fading like an old memory. His faces flashed before him, calm, smiling, gone forever. His breath trembled as the truth finally pushed its way out. 3 words, small but sharp enough to split his world in half. I can't.
The silence that followed was ice cold, thick enough to feel. Then came Nick's voice, snapping through the quiet, full of fury and heartbreak all at once. Screaming accusations, his words burned through the line. You betrayed me! You're heartless! You're abandoning me! Jake's tears fell faster now. His voice cracked as he tried to explain. I'm not abandoning you, but I can't save you this way. But deep down he knew nothing he said would ease that anger. Then silence again. Not peace, not calm, just a heavy finality of something breaking for good. The call ended. Jake stared at his phone, frozen, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shatter his ribs. It felt like he had just cut the last thread connecting him to his brother, the last piece of family he had left. He didn't know if Nick would ever understand, or if he even could. All he knew was this: sometimes love just isn't enough, and realizing that is the cruelest truth there is. When Jake's segment aired that night, December 17th, the world seemed to stop for a moment. Viewers sat in stunned silence, eyes glued to their screens. Some couldn't even breathe. One comment online said, "I've never seen pain like that on live TV." Another person wrote, "This broke me." Jake wasn't just a reporter anymore. He was a man stripped bare, standing in front of millions, showing what real heartbreak looks like. There was no script, no performance, just raw human pain spilling out live on air. People cried watching it. Some turned their TVs off halfway through, thinking they couldn't take it, then turned them right back on, unable to look away. It wasn't news anymore. It was something deeper, something real. One viewer summed it up perfectly online. I watched the news to understand other people's lives, but tonight I felt like I was witnessing pain no one should have to carry in public. And that was exactly what it was. Not chaos, not gossip, not spectacle, but silence, empathy, and unity forming quietly on one side of the screen, as the world collectively felt Jake Reiner's heartbreak echo through the airwaves. Collective grief poured out across the world. Grief for Rob Reiner, the man whose work filled generations with laughter, love, and unforgettable stories. On the other side of that grief stood heartbreak. Heartbreak for Jake and Romy, now left to carry the kind of wounds no one could ever prepare for. They didn't just lose their parents, they lost what family was supposed to mean. One viral comment said it perfectly. They didn't just lose people, they lost the idea of home. Thousands echoed it with hearts and tears flooding the comments. Jake's story became more than a tragedy. It became a wake-up call. Across the country, people picked up the phone to call their parents. They hugged their siblings tighter. They reached out to old friends they hadn't spoken to in years. Because that's what grief does. It shakes you awake. It reminds you that the deepest heartbreak doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you love most. In the days that followed, Jake barely slept. Memories kept replaying endlessly. The warnings, the calls, the moments when he tried so hard to stop what was coming. If only they had listened, he thought, over and over again, the words echoing through sleepless nights. The pain didn't fade. It lived inside him, a heavy mix of grief, guilt, and love, tangled into one unhealed wound. To the world, Jake Reiner was a respected journalist, a rising actor, a man with a legendary last name. But stripped of all that fame and spotlight, what remained was something painfully human, a man who tried to protect his family and couldn't.
That truth haunted him the most, not just the loss itself, but knowing he saw it coming and still couldn't stop it. In the end, Jake didn't speak out looking for sympathy. He spoke out to warn, to turn pain into a message for anyone who still has time to listen. Because sometimes family isn't just about love, it's about seeing clearly before everything falls apart. Some warnings never get a second chance. Some holidays never come back. And if you stayed with this story until the end, thank you. This one wasn't easy to tell, and it's definitely not easy to hear. But if Jake's journey made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own family, your own strength, or maybe your own heartbreak, let it out. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And if you want to keep following stories that go deeper than the headlines, stories about real people, real emotion, and real truth, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Every click, every word, every share keeps these conversations alive, because your voice truly matters. Let's keep telling the stories that remind us what being human really means.